And about a year or so, well, certainly around a year or so ago, we were very conscious that we had quite a lot of people coming to us and saying to us, what is workforce planning about? How do we engage in workforce planning? How do we do that? We were aware also that the, I've kind of jumped, yes, I'm just realising I'm not following my own script here, I've jumped on a wee bit. But and I'll come back to some of the things in the slide there, but we're aware that there were a number of people looking to us for some guidance about workforce planning. And really what we've attempted to do with the tool is begin to address some of those concerns. Obviously we've got Maureen and Caroline and Jan speaking later on today about the tools they've developed. They are all different. Similar, I mean, you can see the overlaps, I think, in many ways once you get to know a little bit about them, but they are all different. And I think together, we hope that the three tools really offer the sector something of value and something that will help you as you attempt to workforce plan yourselves. Just to say a little bit more about the SSSC's role, which I was forgetting about. One of the things, the Regulation of Care Act, in 2000, which was passed by the Scottish Parliament in 2001, or came into effect in 2001, one of the things it did was to set up the Scottish Social Services Council. It also set up the Scottish Commission for the Regulation of Care. And if you look at the part of the Act that deals with the establishment of the SSSC, what you see is there's a particular section within it, section 58, where it indicates that Scottish ministers can delegate certain responsibilities to the SSSC, and those have subsequently been delegated. And their responsibilities around workforce planning talks about us being able to identify the numbers of social workers and social service workers, which basically covers just about everybody else within the sector, who are required to work in the sector. Now, I'm not suggesting, I should say just at the start that I very much agree with Derek's point around puzzle and problem. I don't think workforce planning is about giving you, pressing a button with whatever process you use, and then at the end of that, you get some answer that comes out. I don't think life is never as simple as that. You can't predict, we can't predict the future. I think we all know that. I mean, there was an interesting quote in yesterday's Sunday Herald from, and forgive me if I get this, or he forgives me if I get his name wrong, but I think it's Sir Fred Goodwin, who's the Chief Executive of the Royal Bank of Scotland. And he actually, in an article which has nothing to do with workforce planning at all, I just came across this interesting quote from him, and he said, in a paraphrase, we don't attempt to predict the future, but what we attempt to do is to prepare ourselves for what the future might bring. And I think much of workforce planning, certainly when you get beyond the kind of, if you're looking much beyond 5 years, 5 to 10 years, and that's partly what we're meant to be doing as an SSSC, or as the SSSC, as in the sector skills agreement process I mentioned, is about kind of looking at what might happen, a variety of scenarios. There's no right answer for things. And I would also say, I don't think there's a right process. I think what we're suggesting here, and what Maureen and Caroline and Jan will be talking about, are slightly different processes, but all looking at achieving the same thing, which is enabling you to manage whatever that change process is. I think workforce development, workforce planning are often processes of change. It's about managing change in some ways around your workforce. Hopefully enabling you to manage that change process more effectively. Right, I'll move on because I'm conscious of the time and I'll get all this in. Yeah, the approach taken, what we did was, just very briefly, we did have discussions around, just under a year ago, we had a couple of meetings where we met with a couple of people from ADSW, Association of Directors of Social Work. They have a workforce development group, workforce planning group. We met with a couple of people from there. We met with Maureen from CIRC, that's Scottish Institute for the Residential Childcare, Caroline and Jan from the Voluntary Sector Social Services Workforce Unit, to look at what they were doing, to think about what we were doing. We were aware that other organisations were also going to be involved in trying to develop something and provide support to people. What we see that we've produced is essentially a guide. We wouldn't say, I call it a tool, but I think it's essentially a guide. I see it as kind of walking you through the process as we've defined it. It's a piece of software It's going to be in a CD-ROM. The prototype is currently available, and that's what I've got, and that's what I'm going to be looking at today. There are some changes which I've already asked to happen to that, so I'm aware that some of the things within it have already been slightly altered. Not huge changes, but there are some changes, and we hope that the final version will be available by the end of May. We're looking to produce around 3,000 in our first runoff. And we've still to decide exactly how we want to disseminate that. I'm speaking to our communications people about that in the next week or so, about how best to do that. But it will be, we hope it will be available broadly to the sector by the end of May. It is a process. I'll get, and for those of you who are coming into the workshop this afternoon, I'll run through it in more detail with you, and I'll tell you a bit more about it in a moment. But I'll run through it obviously in much more detail, and let you have a look at it. It does allow you, it's interactive. There's a possibility of saving work as you go along, as you go through it, and also printing that material off. But also, I would say, it is a guide, it's a support. You will have to do work away from that, either gathering information yourselves, speaking with other people, etc. And you can, in fact, you should be able to, when the final version comes out, print the whole thing off, or print off the kind of keep the, if you like, the main structure and text, so you can look at it on paper, if you like, if you find that more helpful. But that's essentially what we've done. It's not, and it's back with our software developer at the moment. Hopefully he'll be in touch with me later this week to tell me when, and he can meet with me to have a look at it. Just to say a bit about it, so you know, there was a guide to workforce planning in local authorities that was produced by an organisation in England called the Employers Organisation. The Employers Organisation, I think, was at the time roughly equivalent to COSLA. It no longer exists, in fact. It was wound up, I think, in the last couple of years, and some of its responsibilities have been split into one body and some with another. And I've not been able to find, to be quite honest, a copy of the actual guide that they originally produced back in 2003 available anywhere. But what we did was we liked the 8-stage process that they had. And what we looked at that in some detail, and have, while using the same, I suppose, terminology and the same kind of focus for each of the stages, we've kind of adapted it to our sector, used examples with it of our sector at times, and developed it so that it can be used as a software tool. And there are eight processes, and I will go into these in more detail this afternoon. There's a pre-planning stage, there's the data collection stage, and data, I think, is key to workforce planning. You need, it's difficult to know what you can, I mean, if you don't have good quality data on your workforce, or at least the issues that you're concerned about, then your ability to plan, and taking one example, for example, if you were interested in increasing the diversity of your workforce, ethnic diversity of your workforce, for example, or the gender balance in your workforce, you'd obviously need to know something about the mix of ethnicities within your workforce currently, or gender, and then what you want to achieve in the future. So you've got something to aim at, and then that kind of process takes place. So data on the workforce is obviously very important. There's an assessment of the current position, particularly in the broader context, the kind of issues which are current for your organisation, maybe taking place within your environment, the issues around maybe employment rates, pay scale, pay rates, and other competing organisations, a host of issues that might be there. Thinking about the future needs, what is it you actually want, in more detail, what it is you're wanting to achieve, what is it you're looking for this new bit of your workforce, or whatever, what you want them to look like, what are the characteristics you want to achieve? Is it about higher qualification rates, better skill levels within the organisation? What is it?